Beyond the towering shadow of Bigfoot and the piercing red eyes of Mothman lies a hidden America, a landscape teeming with strange and forgotten folklore. Every state, every remote mountain range, and even murky swamp seems to have its own secret. A creature whispered about in hushed tones at local diners and around late night campfires. These are the stories that don't often make the national news. The hyper-local legends born from a specific place and a specific fear. This video is an expedition into those shadows. We'll journey from the haunted backroads of the Deep South to the desolate peaks of the West, uncovering the tales of 25 of the nation's most obscure and fascinating cryptids. Now, some of these you may have heard of, some you probably haven't. But either way, prepare to meet not just hairy hominids, but bizarre reptilians, malevolent harbingers of doom, sorrowful beasts that weep in the woods, and otherworldly visitors that terrorized entire towns. Each one is a unique piece of a grand, weird tapestry, a testament to the enduring power of a good monster story. So, step off the beaten path and get ready to discover the monsters in America's backyard. I'm Steve Stockton. Let's walk and see. Now, deep within the dense woodlands and swampy hollows of Alabama lurks a creature of local legend known simply as the White Thing in local dialect. For nearly a century, tales of this enigmatic beast have haunted the rural communities of North and Central Alabama, particularly in the triangle formed by Morgan, Etowah, and Jefferson counties. Unlike its more famous brown-furred cousin, Bigfoot, the White Thing is distinguished by its brilliant, often stark white fur, making it a ghostly apparition against the dark backdrop of the southern forest. Eyewitness descriptions, while varied, paint a consistent and unsettling picture. The creature is said to stand between 6 and 8 feet tall, but is covered head to toe in long white hair. Many accounts describe it as having a build somewhere between a large ape and an unusually broad man with no neck. Its most terrifying feature, however, are its piercing, glowing red eyes and the blood-curdling screams it emits, a sound often likened to the shriek of a woman or the cry of a panther. A powerful, foul stench, similar to that of a wet dog, a skunk, or decaying flesh, is also said to signal its presence. The folklore surrounding the White Thing dates back to the early 20th century. One of the most concentrated areas of sightings is a stretch of land known as Happy Valley near Decatur, Alabama, where numerous residents reported encounters throughout the 1930s and 1940s. Witnesses claim to have seen it peering into windows, crossing roads late at night, and leaving behind large, unidentifiable tracks. The creature is typically shy and elusive, preferring to observe from a distance, but its sheer size and terrifying scream are enough to instill lasting fear. Now, skeptics offer several plausible explanations for the phenomenon. The most common theory is the misidentification of a known animal, most likely a large albino or pale-colored black bear, which are native to the region. Bears can stand on their hind legs, are immensely powerful, and can certainly emit frightening sounds. Other suggestions include large dogs, deer seen in poor lighting, or simply local hoaxes designed to frighten neighbors. Despite these rational explanations, the legend of the White Thing endures. It represents a classic piece of Southern Gothic folklore, a monster born from the dark, mysterious woods that border civilization. Whether it's an undiscovered primate, a supernatural entity, or a figment of collective imagination, the White Thing remains a chilling reminder that some things in the Alabama night are best left undisturbed. Now, in the vast and unforgiving wilderness of central Arizona, where the dense ponderosa pine forests abruptly give way to sheer cliffs, stalks a creature of terrifying local legend, the Mogollon Monster. Named for the rugged escarpment it's said to inhabit, the Mogollon Rim, this cryptid is Arizona's own formidable version of Bigfoot, but with a reputation for being far more aggressive and menacing. Standing over 7 feet tall, the Mogollon Monster is described as a massive bipedal hominid, covered in long matted hair, which ranges in color from dark brown to reddish black. Its most unnerving features are its deep-set, glowing red eyes and a profoundly unsettling human-like face. Unlike many Sasquatch encounters that describe a shy, reclusive animal, reports of the Mogollon Monster often involve displays of extreme territorial aggression. Witnesses, typically hikers and campers, claim it throws rocks, clubs the ground with large sticks, and lets out bone-chilling screams that echo through the canyons, a sound described as a cross between a woman's shriek and an elk's bugle. A foul, overpowering stench, like that of dead fish or skunk, is also said to accompany its presence. While stories of a wild man in Arizona's high country have circulated since pioneer days, the most famous account dates to the 1940s. A prospector named Don Davis reported being stalked for days by a huge hairy beast while camping along the rim. He claimed the creature peered at him from the brush with vacant, inhuman eyes and mimicked his movements, creating a harrowing psychological ordeal. This account, published in local newspapers, cemented the Mogollon Monster's place in southwestern folklore. Now, skeptics propose that sightings are likely misidentifications of the region's native fauna. Arizona is home to a healthy black bear population, and a large bear standing on its hind legs can appear shockingly human-like. The unearthly screams could easily be attributed to mountain lions, whose calls are notoriously eerie. The vast, rugged terrain of the Mogollon Rim, with its countless caves and canyons, also makes it an ideal landscape for legends of hidden creatures to flourish, providing ample cover for any animal or hermit wishing to remain unseen. Whether a misidentified bear, a surviving Gigantopithecus, or a phantom of the wilderness, the Mogollon Monster remains a potent symbol of the untamed American Southwest. For those who venture into the deep forests along the rim, the legend serves as a stark reminder that the wilderness keeps its own secrets, some of which may be large, hairy, and very hostile. Now, in the murky swamplands and moss-draped cypress groves of southern Arkansas lurks one of America's most famous regional cryptids, the Folk Monster. This creature is inextricably linked to the small town of Folk and the labyrinthine waterways of Boggy Creek. While stories of a wild man in the area circulated for decades, the beast clawed its way into the national spotlight during a series of intense encounters in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The Folk Monster is typically described as a large bipedal hominid standing around 7 feet tall and covered in thick, dark brown or black hair. Its chest is said to be massive and broad, and it moves with a peculiar loping gait, swinging its arms as it runs. But its most defining characteristics, its glowing red eyes, and most notably, its tracks. Unlike the 5-toed footprints associated with Bigfoot, the Folk Monster is said to leave behind enormous 3-toed tracks, a biological anomaly that deepens its mystery. A powerful rancid odor, often compared to a skunk or wet dog, is also reported to hang in the air during an encounter. The legend was forever cemented in 1971 with the terrifying experience of the Ford family. Late one night, the creature allegedly attacked their rural home, reaching through a window and clawing at Bobby Ford, who, along with his brother Don, fought it off with gunfire. The monster retreated, but the encounter left behind physical evidence, including scratches on the house and the infamous 3-toed tracks, which were investigated by local law enforcement. This event became the dramatic centerpiece of the story that would soon captivate the nation. In 1972, the Folk Monster became a drive-in movie star with the release of Charles B. Pierce's docudrama, The Legend of Boggy Creek. The film blended dramatic reenactments with interviews of actual folk residents who claimed to have seen the creature. Its eerie, atmospheric portrayal of the Arkansas swamps and the unsettling testimonials of local witnesses transformed the monster from a regional tale into a piece of American folklore, inspiring a generation of monster hunters. Skeptics argued that the Folk Monster is a classic case of misidentification, likely a large black bear, which are native to Arkansas and can walk on their hind legs, especially when startled. The 3-toed tracks are often explained as either a hoax or the result of a normal animal track where 2 toes merged in the soft mud. Regardless of its true nature, the Folk Monster remains a quintessential southern legend, a swamp stomper whose story is as thick and murky as the Boggy Creek bottomlands it calls home. Along the rugged, windswept ridges of California's Santa Lucia Mountains, a different kind of legend casts its shadow. Now, these are not tales of a monstrous beast, but of the Dark Watchers, or Los Vigilantes Oscuros, as they were named by the early Spanish settlers. For centuries, these silent, featureless humanoid figures have been seen standing against the skyline, their presence more spectral than physical. An encounter with the Dark Watchers is a uniquely unnerving experience. They appear most often at twilight and dawn, perceived as unnaturally tall silhouettes of men, sometimes described as wearing broad-brimmed hats and or flowing capes. They stand motionless on remote peaks and ridges, their attention seemingly fixed on the travelers below. They never speak or make a sound. The most consistent and unsettling aspect of the legend is their elusiveness. The moment an observer tries to approach or get a closer look, the figures inexplicably vanish. The lore of the Watchers is deeply woven into the region's history. Stories of mysterious, man-like spirits in the mountains existed in the folklore of the native Chumash people long before a European arrival. The legend was later adopted by Spanish vaqueros and ranchers. It gained widespread recognition when author John Steinbeck, who grew up hearing the tales in Salinas Valley, included them in his 1938 short story, Flight. He described them as the Dark Watchers who looked down from the mountains, noting that no one knew who the Watchers were nor where they lived. While paranormal enthusiasts speculate they're ghosts, interdimensional beings, or guardians of the mountains, scientists offer compelling natural explanations. The most widely accepted theory is the Brocken specter, an optical phenomenon common in mountainous areas. When the sun is behind an observer who's looking down into the mist or fog, their own shadow can be cast onto the clouds, appearing enormous, elongated, and sometimes surrounded by a halo of light, a glory. The shadow moves as the clouds drift and disappears instantly if the observer changes position, perfectly mimicking the behavior of a watcher. Another explanation is pareidolia, the psychological tendency to perceive familiar patterns, such as human figures, in ambiguous stimuli like rock formations or gnarled trees, especially in the deceptive light of dusk. Regardless of their origin, be it optical illusion, psychological trick, or ancient spirit, the Dark Watchers endure as a powerful personification of the sublime and eerie presence of the California wilderness. In the shadowy woods and lonely backroads of Prince George's County, Maryland, stalks one of America's most menacing urban legends, the Goatman. This creature is not a shy, reclusive beast, but a chilling amalgam of man and beast, often described as a huge, hairy figure with the legs and horned head of a goat, but the torso of a man. Brandishing a bloody axe, he is said to haunt the areas around Bowie and Fletchertown, leaving a legacy of terror that peaked in the 1970s. The origin of the Goatman is split between two popular narratives. The most widely circulated tale is a modern horror story centered on the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. According to this version, a scientist named Stephen Fletcher was conducting experiments on goats when a procedure went horribly wrong, fusing his DNA with that of his subject. Driven mad by the transformation, he escaped into the surrounding woods, fueled by primal rage. This scientific origin story anchors the legend in a real-world location, adding a layer of chilling plausibility for thrill seekers. An older, more folkloric version tells of a reclusive herder who lived in the woods with his beloved flock of goats. When teenagers killed his animals, the man's grief turned to madness, and he became a vengeful monster, preying on those who dared to trespass on his land. The Goatman's notoriety exploded in the early 1970s. Local newspapers began reporting on sightings and a series of gruesome animal deaths, particularly dogs, that were attributed to the creature. Teenagers frequenting lovers' lanes in the area reported hearing strange guttural sounds, finding deep scratches on their cars, and seeing a monstrous figure emerge from the trees, sometimes attacking their vehicles with an axe. Locations like Governor's Bridge Road became infamous, with the Goatman's Bridge serving as the focal point of the legend. Despite a complete lack of credible evidence, there is no record of a Dr. Fletcher at the research center, and the animal deaths were likely the work of wild dogs or a train. The story of the Goatman has shown remarkable staying power. Folklorists see him as a distinctly American monster, blending the ancient archetype of the satyr with a modern fear of science gone awry. He is a cautionary tale, a boogeyman created to keep people off dark roads at night. Whether a genetic experiment or a campfire story, the Goatman of Maryland remains a terrifying fixture in the landscape of American urban legends. Now, while most American cryptids lurk in remote forests and murky swamps, Detroit, Michigan is haunted by a malevolent entity of a different sort, the Nain Rouge, or Red Dwarf. For over 300 years, this creature has been regarded not as a physical beast to be hunted, but as a sinister harbinger of doom, its appearance foretelling disaster for the city and its residents. The Nain Rouge is described as a small, childlike humanoid with reddish or black fur, blazing red eyes, and a cruel, rotting-toothed grin. It's an imp, a goblin whose very presence is a curse. The legend is woven into the fabric of Detroit's founding. In 1701, the city's founder, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, was allegedly confronted by the creature. Despite a fortune-teller's warning to appease the imp, Cadillac struck the Nain Rouge with his cane and drove it away. According to the tale, this act of disrespect brought a curse upon Cadillac, who soon lost his fortune and died in obscurity, and upon the city he had just established. Ever since, the Nain Rouge has been spotted just before the city's greatest calamities. It was reportedly seen dancing on the banks of the Detroit River before the disastrous Battle of Bloody Run in 1763. It was witnessed scampering through the smoldering ruins of the Great Fire of 1805, which leveled the city. Sightings were also reported before General William Hull's humiliating surrender of Detroit during the War of 1812, before the destructive 12th Street riot in 1967, and even before a massive ice storm paralyzed the region in 1976. The pattern, it's always the same. A fleeting glimpse of a small, red-eyed figure, followed by misfortune. In recent years, Detroiters have decided to fight back. The legend has been transformed into a unique cultural event, the Marche du Nain Rouge. Every spring, thousands of residents parade through the city in festive costumes, celebrating Detroit's resilience and symbolically chasing the Red Dwarf out of town. This parade turns a dark legend into an affirmation of civic pride and a defiant gesture against the forces of blight and despair that the creature represents. Whether a genuine supernatural entity or simply a folkloric scapegoat for a city that has endured more than its share of hardship, the Nain Rouge is one of America's most unique and enduring legends, an urban demon whose story is inseparable from the soul of Detroit itself. Now, in the pantheon of American cryptids, few are as bizarre as the Loveland Frogmen. These creatures are not towering ape-like beasts or shadowy phantoms, but 3 to 4 foot tall bipedal frogs, said to inhabit the banks of the Little Miami River near the small town of Loveland, Ohio. The legend is built upon a handful of specific and well-documented encounters that have cemented the frogmen as a classic of weird folklore. The first major sighting occurred in May 1955 when a businessman was driving late at night. He reported seeing 3 strange figures huddled by the roadside. He described them as small humanoids with leathery skin and distinctly frog-like faces. The man watched them for several minutes until one of the creatures allegedly held up a metal wand that shot a shower of sparks, spooking the driver into speeding away. This strange technological detail set the frogmen apart from your typical monster sightings. The legend, however, truly took hold in March 1972, thanks to 2 separate police encounters. Around 1 a.m. on March 3rd, Officer Ray Shockey was driving on Riverside Drive when he saw a creature crouched in the middle of the road. Illuminated by his headlights, he described it as being about 4 feet tall, weighing 50 to 75 pounds, with leathery skin and the face of a frog. Before he could react further, the creature stood up and scrambled over the guardrail, disappearing down the embankment toward the river. Just 2 weeks later, Officer Mark Matthews had his own encounter in the same area. He initially spotted what he thought was a piece of trash or a dead animal in the road. When he got out of his car to remove it, the creature rose into a crouch. Startled, Matthews drew his service revolver and fired a shot as the frog-like figure scurried over the guardrail to safety. He later returned with Officer Shockey and found distinct scrape marks where the creature had gone over the rail. Years later, Matthews would offer a more skeptical perspective, suggesting what he saw might have been a large pet iguana that had lost its tail, though his initial report remains the cornerstone of the legend. Skeptics point to misidentification, a large bullfrog, a heron, or a tailless lizard as the likely source of the sightings. Yet, the story of the Loveland Frogmen has hopped into local culture, inspiring everything from a musical to local festivals. Whether an unknown amphibious species or a simple mistake on a dark road, These bizarre creatures hold a quirky but permanent place in American cryptozoology. In the oppressive summer heat of 1988, the sleepy little town of Bishopville, South Carolina, became the epicenter of a media frenzy centered on a terrifying creature known locally as the Lizard Man of Scape Swamp. Unlike ancient folklore, this legend was born from a single harrowing encounter that sparked a wave of sightings and a full blown monster hunt. The phenomenon began around 2 a.m. on June 29, 1988, when 17-year-old Christopher Davis was driving home from work. After a tire blew out on a remote road bordering Scape Swamp, he stopped to change it. As he finished, he heard a thumping noise and saw a horrifying creature emerge from the trees. According to Davis, it was a 7-foot-tall bipedal reptile with green scaly skin, 3 clawed fingers on each hand, and glowing red eyes. The creature charged at him, and Davis scrambled into his car and sped away. In his rearview mirror, he saw the beast running at incredible speed, eventually leaping onto the roof of his car. He swerved violently until the creature was thrown off. Now, when Davis reported the incident to the Lee County Sheriff's Office, his genuine terror and the physical evidence on his car convinced deputies to take him seriously. The vehicle had deep scratches and claw marks on its roof, and a side view mirror was badly damaged. The story was picked up by the local press and quickly went national, igniting lizard man fever. In the weeks that followed, numerous other sightings were reported. Locals claimed to have seen a similar reptilian creature crossing roads or lurking near the swamp. The most compelling evidence came in the form of large, 3-toed footprints found in the muddy swampland. Plaster casts were made, becoming iconic artifacts of the scare. Sheriff Liston Truesdale and his deputies were inundated with reports investigating tracks and fielding calls from monster hunters who descended on the small town. Skeptics were quick to offer explanations. Many believed Davis saw a large black bear, which could have been responsible for the car's damage and can leave unusual-looking tracks. The subsequent sightings are often attributed to a mix of mass hysteria and some deliberate hoaxes. One local man later admitted to faking some of the tracks. Regardless of its origin, beast, bear, or collective delusion, the Lizard Man of Scape Swamp is a textbook example of a modern monster legend, a terrifying figure that clawed its way out of the swamp and into American folklore. In the rich tapestry of West Virginia folklore, which is famously dominated by the Mothman of Point Pleasant, a lesser-known but arguably stranger entity haunts the town of Grafton. Known as the Grafton Monster, this creature is not defined by wings or glowing eyes, but by a chilling and physically impossible characteristic. It appears to have no head. The legend was born during a few weeks in the summer of 1964. The foundational sighting occurred on the night of June 16th, when Robert Cockrell, a young reporter for the Grafton Sentinel, was driving home along the Tygart Valley River. As he rounded a curve, his headlights illuminated a massive figure standing in the middle of the road. Cockrell described a creature that was 7 to 9 feet tall with a bulky, muscular build. Its most shocking feature were its pale, off-white skin, which appeared slick and smooth like a seal's, and the complete absence of a visible head or neck. The top of its torso simply rounded off where a head should be. Stunned, Cockrell swerved to avoid the creature. As he passed, it turned slowly and shuffled into the woods, never making a sound. He reported his encounter in the newspaper, and the story of the Grafton Monster immediately captured the local imagination. In the following days, others came forward with their own stories. A group of teenagers who went to the same spot hoping for a glimpse of the beast claimed they saw it lurking in the trees. They added another eerie detail to the lore, stating the monster emitted a low, mournful whistling sound that echoed through the woods. After this small flap of sightings, the creature seemingly vanished, leaving behind only its bizarre and terrifying legend. Numerous theories have emerged to explain the headless horror. Skeptics suggest a misidentified barn owl, whose bright white breast, tucked-in head, and habit of standing in roads could create a strange, headless silhouette in the dark, and whose hissing calls could be interpreted as a whistle. Others propose it was a bear with its head down foraging, or simply a person wearing a light-colored poncho. More esoteric theories link the Grafton Monster to the broader wave of high strangeness that swept through West Virginia in the 1960s, suggesting it was an alien or supernatural entity. Whatever its true identity, misidentified animal, local hoax, or otherworldly visitor, the Grafton Monster remains one of America's most peculiar cryptids. Its utterly alien anatomy ensures that this headless phantom continues to shuffle through the back pages of Appalachian monster lore. Now, in the rural heartland of Walworth County, Wisconsin, the ancient European myth of the werewolf found a modern American home. On a quiet country lane called Bray Road, near the town of Elkhorn, a series of chilling encounters in the late 1980s and early 1990s gave rise to the legend of a creature known as the Beast of Bray Road. Witnesses consistently describe a large, hairy, bipedal canine. Standing between 6 and 7 feet tall when on its hind legs, the creature is said to have the muscular torso of a man, but the head and legs of a wolf. Its features include coarse brown or grayish fur, a long snout, pointed ears, and piercing yellow or amber eyes that seem to glow in the dark. It's reportedly capable of switching between running on all fours and walking or standing upright, often seen hunched over roadkill or darting across the road in front of cars. While whispers of a local man-wolf had existed for decades, the phenomenon exploded into the public consciousness thanks to the work of journalist Linda S. Godfrey. In the early 1990s, while working for a local paper, she began investigating a string of bizarre reports that had been quietly filed with a local animal welfare officer. Her articles cataloged the experiences of credible, sober witnesses, from tavern managers to high school students, who all told remarkably similar stories of seeing a werewolf-like creature. The encounters were often brief but terrifying. One of the most famous accounts came from a young woman named Dorothy Gibson, who reported that on a foggy night in 1991, something heavy slammed into the back of her car on Bray Road. When she got home, she found deep, unidentifiable scratches on the trunk of her car. Others reported seeing the creature kneeling by the roadside as if in prayer or watching them from the cornfields. Unlike many cryptid sightings, the Beast of Bray Road was not a fleeting glimpse, but often a direct, frightening confrontation. Numerous theories have been proposed to explain the beast. Skeptics suggest misidentification of a large dog, a common black bear afflicted with mange, which can make an animal look disturbingly unnatural, or perhaps even a local hermit playing a prank. Believers, however, point to the consistency of the sightings. Some connect the creature to Native American legends of the Shunka Warakin, a hyena-like canine, while others believe it to be a genuine, undiscovered biological entity or something even more supernatural. Whatever its true identity, the Beast of Bray Road has become a classic of modern American folklore, a chilling case where an archetypical monster of the old world seemed to manifest in the cornfields of the new. Nestled high in the Sierra Nevada mountains on the border of California and Nevada lies Lake Tahoe, a body of water renowned for its stunning clarity and immense depth. But beneath its placid sapphire blue surface, legend holds that a mysterious creature resides. Affectionately known as Tahoe Tessie, this aquatic cryptid is often described as North America's answer to the Loch Ness Monster. Descriptions of Tessie are remarkably consistent with classic lake monster sightings worldwide. Witnesses typically report a massive serpentine creature, ranging from 10 to over 60 feet in length, with smooth dark skin of a grayish-black or even turquoise hue. It's said to have a series of humps that break the surface as it moves, propelling itself through the frigid water at surprising speeds. While the Tessie moniker is a 20th century invention, tales of a dangerous entity in the lake are much older. The native Washoe people have long-standing legends of water spirits and a monstrous bird-like creature called the Ong that lived in the deepest parts of the lake and would snatch people from their canoes. As settlers and tourists flocked to the region in the 19th and 20th centuries, these ancient stories evolved into sightings of a huge, snake-like beast. The legend gained significant traction in the modern area, with numerous sightings reported by boaters, fishermen, and even large groups of people. The most famous tale associated with the creature, though likely apocryphal, involves the renowned oceanographer Jacques Cousteau. According to popular lore, Cousteau explored Lake Tahoe with a mini-submarine in the 1970s. When he surfaced, he was allegedly pale and visibly shaken, refusing to release any footage or data from the deepest parts of the lake. He supposedly told people that, quote, The world isn't ready for what's down there, end quote, fueling speculation that he had a definitive encounter with Tessie. Skeptics offer more grounded explanations. Lake Tahoe's great depth and size make it easy to misidentify known phenomena. The most likely candidates for Tessie sightings include large migratory fish like giant lake trout, or even a rogue sturgeon, which are known for their prehistoric appearance. Other plausible theories include lines of swimming river otters, which can appear as a single undulating body from a distance, or unusual wind-driven wave patterns that create the illusion of humps moving across the water. Whether a surviving prehistoric reptile, a giant fish, or a trick of the light, Tahoe Tessie has become a beloved part of the region's culture, a symbol of the deep, cold mysteries hidden just beneath the surface of America's most famous alpine lake. Now, in the deep glacial waters of Payette Lake, near the resort town of McCall, Idaho, swims a legendary creature known as Charlie. Like her more famous counterparts in Scotland and Lake Tahoe, Charlie is described as a massive serpentine beast, a classic lake monster that has captured the local imagination for over a century. Tales of a fearsome entity in the lake originated with the region's Native American tribes, who warned of an evil spirit in the water. As white settlers and loggers moved into the area, they began reporting their own sightings. In 1920, a newspaper article detailed an encounter by loggers who saw a colossal creature creating a wake like a motorboat. However, the monster remained nameless until the 1950s, when a local newspaper contest officially christened her Charlie. The most significant sighting occurred in 1944, when a large group of people saw the creature up close from a boat. They described it as being over 30 feet long with a dinosaur-like head, a distinct humped back, and smooth dark skin. It moved powerfully through the water, leaving a V-shaped wake before it submerged and vanished into the lake's depths, which reached nearly 400 feet. Over the years, numerous photos and videos of ambiguous shapes and wakes have surfaced, continuing to fuel the legend. Unlike more menacing cryptids, however, Charlie has been adopted as a beloved, if mysterious, local mascot, her image appearing on signs and in businesses around McCall. The leading theory among skeptics and many locals points to a very real and prehistoric-looking fish, the white sturgeon. The nearby snake and salmon river systems are home to some of the largest freshwater fish in North America, with sturgeon capable of growing to over 15 feet and weighing nearly 2,000 pounds. These bottom-dwelling giants are covered in bony plates or scutes that form distinct ridges along their backs, perfectly matching the humped description of Charlie. Now, it's highly plausible that a population of sturgeon became landlocked in Payette Lake thousands of years ago, or that a few massive individuals found their way into the lake system. A sturgeon breaking the surface would certainly look like a primeval monster to an unsuspecting boater. Other explanations include lines of swimming river otters, large submerged logs from the logging era being moved by currents, or unusual wave patterns. Whether a surviving prehistoric beast or a giant misidentified fish, Charlie the Payette Lake monster remains a cherished piece of Idaho folklore, embodying the wild mystery that lies beneath the surface of the state's pristine mountain lakes. In the humid, flood-prone lowlands of southern Illinois, known as the Total Bottoms, a terrifying creature is said to lurk. Long before its famous cousin, the Big Muddy Monster, terrorized Murfreesboro, the Total Bottoms monster established itself as a local legend near the town of Harrisburg. The creature is described as a massive bipedal hominid, but with one standout feature. Its fur is not brown or black, but a ghostly white or dingy gray. The legend coalesced during the summer of 1963. The primary encounter involved a group of young men who were out spotlighting, hunting for frogs, late one night in the swampy bottoms. As they swept their lights across the water's edge, they froze in terror. Standing before them was a creature they estimated to be over 7 feet tall, covered in matted, whitish-gray hair. It was far larger than any bear they had ever seen. The men scrambled back to their vehicle and fled, returning later with reinforcements and firearms, but the creature was gone. All they found were a set of large, vaguely human-like footprints pressed into the mud. Now, their story ignited a flurry of local interest and fear. Soon, other residents of Saline County came forward. Many reported hearing horrific, high-pitched screams emanating from the bottoms in the dead of night, screams that belong to no known animal. Others claim to have caught fleeting glimpses of a large, pale shape moving through the dense underbrush. Like many Bigfoot or Sasquatch-type creatures, the Tuttle Bottoms monster was associated with a deeply unpleasant, rank odor that would hang in the air after a sighting. Many cryptozoologists and folklorists believe the Tuttle Bottoms monster is directly related to the Big Muddy Monster, which gained national attention a decade later in 1973, just 50 miles away in Murfreesboro. The descriptions are nearly identical: a tall, pale-furred, foul-smelling hominid that screamed and left large tracks. It's likely that the 1963 Harrisburg sightings were an earlier, less publicized chapter of the same regional phenomenon. Skeptics point to the most plausible explanation, as always: a large albino or unusually colored black bear. A bear can stand on its hind legs, leave confounding tracks in soft mud, and can certainly be a frightening sight in a spotlight's beam. The screams could be attributed to a bobcat or a fox, whose calls are notoriously unsettling. With an undiscovered primate or misidentified bear, the Tuttle Bottoms monster remains a chilling piece of Illinois folklore, a white thing of the swamp that haunts the dark history of the region. In the dense, remote forests of down east Maine, within a body of water bearing the wonderfully folkloric name Poco Moonshine Lake, lives the legend of a classic American sea serpent. Unlike many modern cryptids, the story of the Poco Moonshine Lake monster is a tale deeply rooted in the 19th century, a time when the line between the known natural world and fantastic beast was still thrillingly blurred. The legend is anchored by a well-documented and widely publicized event from July of 1882. Two respected local men, sawmill owner L.B. Dinsmore and a friend, were paddling a canoe on the lake when they witnessed something extraordinary. They described a creature with a head as large as a common water pail, attached to a slender neck about 10 feet long and the size of a man's arm. The head itself was said to resemble that of a large sea turtle. The creature swam with purpose, heading directly for their canoe. Gripped by terror, the two men paddled for their lives, reaching the shore just as the mysterious animal submerged and vanished. Dinsmore's account, published in regional newspapers like the Machias Union and even reaching the New York Sun, created a local sensation. His credible reputation prompted other residents to come forward with their own stories, some of which predated his encounter. These accounts corroborated the description of a long-necked animal, though some likened its head to that of a horse or a camel. The local Passamaquoddy people also had ancient traditions of a great horned serpent, the Gittaskog, said to inhabit the region's lakes and rivers, suggesting a long history of belief in powerful aquatic beings in the area. The most compelling and widely accepted explanation for the Poco Moonshine monster is the misidentification of a large animal native to the Maine woods, the moose. A bull moose swimming across a lake is a surprisingly deceptive sight. With its massive body submerged, only its head, long neck, and the top of its back and rump are visible, often appearing as a series of distinct humps. From a distance, its large horse-like head, held high above the water on a slender neck, is a near-perfect match for the creature described by the witnesses. An adult moose can move surprisingly fast in the water, and its appearance could easily startle someone unfamiliar with the sight. Whether a genuine sea serpent, a trick of the light, or simply a majestic moose on a morning swim, the monster of Poco Moonshine Lake is a perfectly preserved piece of 19th century American folklore, a reminder of a time when mystery could still surface from the depths of a remote Maine lake. Soaring through the vast desert skies of Arizona, the thunderbird is a cryptid that blurs the line between ancient mythology and modern monster sightings. Far more than just a large bird, it's a creature of immense size and power, a living embodiment of the storm, whose legend is deeply embedded in the history of the American West. The thunderbird originates as a powerful and sacred figure in the lore of numerous Native American tribes. Now, in these traditions, it's not a mere animal, but a supernatural being that creates thunder with the beat of its colossal wings and shoots lightning from its eyes. It represents the immense power of the sky and weather, often depicted as a benevolent spirit protecting humans from malevolent forces from the underworld or beneath the water. This mythological foundation gives the modern cryptid a cultural resonance that few others possess. The transition from myth to cryptozoology is largely thanks to one sensational, though likely legendary, story from 1890. The legend, centered around Tombstone, Arizona, tells of two cowboys who shot and killed a gigantic pterodactyl-like bird with smooth skin and featherless wings. They allegedly dragged the massive carcass into town and had it photographed, with its wingspan stretching the length of a barn. The photo, allegedly published in the local newspaper, the Tombstone Epitaph, showed several men standing underneath one wing. This Tombstone Thunderbird photograph has since become the holy grail of cryptozoology, but despite decades of searching, no copy has ever been found, and the original newspaper article remains missing. Skeptics argue that modern Thunderbird sightings are misidentifications of known large birds. The prime suspect is the California condor, a majestic bird with a wingspan of nearly 10 feet that was once native to Arizona. Seen against a vast, featureless sky, it can be easy to misjudge its size and distance. Other candidates include turkey vultures or even golden eagles. The more cryptozoologically minded suggest the creature could be a surviving population of Tetratornis, a giant prehistoric bird that lived during the Ice Age. Whether a sacred spirit, the subject of a lost photograph, or a misidentified condor, the Thunderbird continues to cast a colossal shadow over the imagination. It represents the enduring mystery of the vast open skies of the American Southwest and the feeling that something ancient and powerful is still watching from above. In the folklore of Maryland's Frederick County, few creatures are as wildly imaginative or terrifying as the snallygaster. This is not a simple beast, but a grotesque chimera, a monster seemingly pieced together from a nightmare. Its legend, rooted in the superstitions of German immigrants, was later resurrected by sensationalist newspapers to create one of America's most vivid monster panics. The snallygaster's name is a corruption of the German Schneller, Geist, meaning quick spirit. The original tales, brought to the Middletown Valley in the 18th century, described a half-reptile, half-bird demon that would swoop silently from the sky to snatch children and livestock. Over time, the description grew more elaborate. The creature was said to be a dragon-like beast with a metallic beak full of razor teeth, a single eye in its forehead, and sometimes octopus-like tentacles. It was known for its blood-curdling screech, often compared to a locomotive whistle, and was said to drain the blood of its victims. For generations, the snallygaster was little more than a local boogeyman used to frighten misbehaving children. However, that changed dramatically in February and March of 1909. In what was likely a newspaper circulation war, local editors began running a series of shocking first-person accounts of the creature. These articles claimed the snallygaster had returned, describing harrowing encounters where it chased men and was seen flying over the hills. The stories became increasingly bizarre, with one report claiming the creature had laid an egg the size of a barrel. The tale grew so large that one article even suggested President Theodore Roosevelt was considering canceling a trip to hunt the beast himself. The 1909 snallygaster scare ended abruptly and as fantastically as it began. A final story, likely intended to put the hoax to rest, claimed the creature met its end after flying over a moonshiner's still. Overcome by the potent alcohol fumes, it supposedly passed out, fell into a vat of boiling mash, and was pickled to death by the revenue agents who found it. A prime example of how folklore can be magnified by media, the snallygaster remains a beloved Maryland legend. It's a terrifying amalgam of old-world superstition and new-world yellow journalism, a creature whose bizarre story has long outlived its supposed demise in a moonshiner's vat. While the Thunderbird is often associated with the desert skies of the Southwest, the dense forests and rolling mountains of Pennsylvania have their own rich and persistent tradition of giant, mysterious flying creatures. For over a century, the skies of the Keystone State have been the backdrop for sightings of impossibly large birds, creating a distinct chapter in American cryptid lore. The tales date back to the 19th century, when local newspapers would occasionally print sensational accounts of flying dragons or pterodactyl-like beasts seen by farmers and woodsmen. These historical reports describe monstrous, leathery winged creatures, blurring the line between a giant bird and a surviving prehistoric reptile. This theme of a prehistoric survivor would echo into modern sightings. Now, the 20th century saw numerous reports, but the legend gained significant traction in the 1960s and 70s, particularly in the state's rural northern tier. Residents reported seeing birds as large as a small airplane soaring over the heavily forested landscape. However, one of the most compelling and well-documented cases occurred much more recently, in the summer of 2001 near South Greensburg. Over several weeks, multiple witnesses reported seeing a massive dark bird circling the area. One witness, a licensed pilot, observed the creature for 15 minutes and dismissed the idea that it was a known bird or an ultralight aircraft. He estimated its wingspan to be at least 15 feet and described its flight as very unbirdlike, noting that it didn't appear to flap its wings. Skeptics offer several rational explanations for these sightings. The most common is the misidentification of large native birds. A great blue heron with its 6-foot wingspan, long neck, and prehistoric appearance in flight is a frequent suspect. Bald eagles, which have made a dramatic comeback in Pennsylvania, can also appear deceptively large against an open sky, leading to an overestimation of size. The power of suggestion and the amplification of stories in small rural communities also play a significant role. Believers, however, maintain that the consistency and sheer scale described in the most credible reports cannot be dismissed so easily. They suggest the possibility of a relic population of a large Pleistocene bird of prey, like a tetratornus, that has somehow survived in the vast remote wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains. Whether a misidentified heron, a folk memory, or a genuine relic from a bygone era, the Pennsylvania thunderbird remains a potent symbol of the wilderness that still exists in the state's deep woods and endless mountains, a reminder that it's always wise to keep one eye on the sky. Now, the Wolf Woman of Mobile, Alabama, is a prime example of a modern American monster flap, a brief, intense period of sightings and panic that leaves a lasting mark on a community's folklore. For a few frantic weeks in the spring of 1971, this bizarre creature terrorized the Crichton and Toulminville neighborhoods of Mobile, Alabama, sparking a citywide scare. Unlike a typical Bigfoot or werewolf, the Wolf Woman was described as a strange and unsettling hybrid. Eyewitnesses claimed to see a creature that had the upper body of a beautiful woman, but the lower body of a wolf or a large, shaggy dog. She was most often seen at night, sometimes running on all fours with incredible speed, other times peering into the windows of homes and businesses before vanishing into the darkness. The hysteria ignited in March 1971. The initial widely reported sighting came from a group of women attending a function at a local convent, who claimed to see a hairy, stooped figure staring at them through a window. The story spread like wildfire. Soon, the Mobile Police Department was inundated with dozens of calls each night reporting encounters with a hairy, wild woman. The media attention fueled the panic, and armed residents began forming posses to patrol the streets, determined to catch or kill the creature. Several theories emerged to explain the phenomenon. The most tragic and folkloric explanation connects the sightings to a local legend of a dog boy, a child with a canine-like affliction who was supposedly kept hidden away in a nearby house. Some speculated the Wolf Woman was his mother or another family member who had escaped. Skeptics, however, point to more rational explanations. The entire event carries the hallmarks of mass hysteria, where an initial strange sighting, amplified by media and gossip, caused frightened residents to misidentify ordinary things, a large stray dog, a person in a woolly coat, or even shadows, as the monster. The possibility of a deliberate hoax is also strong, as the sightings began and ended abruptly, suggesting a prankster may have been responsible. After a few weeks of intense activity, the calls to the police station stopped, and the Wolf Woman of Mobile vanished as quickly as she had appeared. Though her reign of terror was brief, she has never been forgotten, remaining a textbook case of a modern urban legend in action and one of Alabama's strangest and most concentrated monster scares. Now, living deep within the gold and silver mines of Colorado, the Tommyknockers are not monstrous beasts, but rather gnome-like spirits from a rich vein of old-world folklore. These subterranean beings, standing about 2 feet tall, are said to resemble wizened old men, often described as wearing miniature versions of mining gear. Their legend, a constant presence in the dangerous world of hard rock mining, is a fascinating tale of superstition, safety, and survival. Now, the lore of the Tommyknockers was not born in the American West, but was carried there in the 19th century by immigrant miners from Cornwall, England. The Cornish, known as Cousin Jacks, were highly sought after for their expert mining skills. They brought with them a belief that the mines were inhabited by the spirits of miners who had died in previous accidents. These spirits, the Tommyknockers, made their presence known through a distinct knocking sound from deep within the rock. This knocking was the core of the legend and could be interpreted in two ways, depending on the spirit's mood. Benevolent Tommyknockers would rap on the walls of a mine to warn miners of an imminent cave-in, giving them precious seconds to aid their escape. Their knocking might also signal the location of a rich lode of ore, leading a fortunate miner to wealth. To stay on their good side, miners would leave offerings for them, traditionally a piece of their lunch, known as a pasty. However, Tommyknockers could also be mischievous or malevolent tricksters. An angered spirit might hide tools, extinguish lanterns, or mimic the sounds of a collapse to cause panic. Their knocking could also be a sinister attempt to lure a miner down a dangerous, unstable tunnel to their doom. Whistling in a mine was said to be particularly offensive to them and was strictly taboo. From a practical standpoint, the superstition served a vital purpose. The knocking sounds were likely the natural creaking and groaning of rock and wooden support timbers under immense geological pressure, the very sounds that precede a cave-in. By attributing this phenomenon to a supernatural source, the legend encouraged miners to heed these audible warnings, making the belief in Tommyknockers a life-saving folk practice. Whether helpful ghosts, geological sounds, or a psychological comfort in the terrifying darkness of the mines, the Tommyknockers are a powerful example of folklore brought to America and adapted to a new, dangerous frontier, their ghostly knocking forever echoing in the history of the American West. Deep within the forests and swamps of New England, particularly in the Wampanoag heartland of Massachusetts, dwell the Pukwudgies, ancient troll-like beings whose legend is far older than the United States itself. These are not shy, reclusive beasts, but powerful and often malevolent tricksters with a long and bitter history with humankind. Originating in the traditional stories of the Wampanoag people, Pukwudgies are described as small humanoid creatures, typically 2 to 3 feet tall. They have smooth gray skin that is sometimes said to glow faintly, along with disproportionately large noses, fingers, and ears. Their most distinctive feature is often said to be the sharp, porcupine-like quills running down their backs, which they can shoot at will. According to the lore, the Pukwudgies were not always enemies of people. However, their relationship soured due to their jealousy of the affection the giant creator spirit Mashop had for the newly created humans. Mashop, annoyed by the Pukwudgies' mischief, tried to get rid of them. Though he scattered them far and wide, they eventually returned, filled with a burning desire for revenge against both him and the humans he favored. Their malevolence grew, and they transformed from mere nuisances into dangerous adversaries. The Pukwudgies are said to be masters of magic and deception. They possess a host of supernatural abilities, including the power to appear and disappear at will, shapeshift, often into a porcupine or even a ball of light, lure travelers off cliffs with their glowing lights, and attack with poison arrows or small knives. They are known for their capricious nature. One might simply play pranks and hide things, while another might kidnap children or commit some other atrocity. In modern times, the legend is found in a notorious home in the Freetown Fall River State Forest, a central part of southeastern Massachusetts' infamous Bridgewater Triangle, an area known for intense paranormal activity. Hikers and visitors to the forest report feelings of being watched, hearing strange whispers and giggles, and catching fleeting glimpses of small gray figures darting between the trees. These modern encounters have solidified the Pukwudgies' reputation as one of New England's most feared and respected supernatural beings. Whether ancient elemental spirits or a powerful folkloric warning to respect the woods, the Pukwudgies serve as a chilling reminder that some of America's oldest and most dangerous legends are homegrown. For a few terrifying nights in the autumn of 1903, the small coal mining town of Van Meter, Iowa, was besieged by a creature seemingly torn from the pages of science fiction. The Van Meter visitor was not a cryptid of the typical flesh and blood variety. It was an otherworldly entity whose brief but intense appearance remains one of America's most bizarre and well-documented monster flaps. The ordeal began on September 29, 1903, when respected citizens began reporting encounters with a massive bat-winged humanoid. The creature was described as having a blunt horn on its forehead from which it could shoot a powerful, blinding beam of bright light. It was accompanied by a sickening, overpowering stench and was seemingly impervious to gunfire. The town's most prominent men were among the witnesses. U.G. Griffith, a farm implement dealer, saw it first, leaping between rooftops. The next night, the town's physician, Dr. Alcott, was awakened by the creature outside his home and fired at it with a shotgun, but to no effect. The following evening, Clarence Dunn, the cashier at the local bank, shot at the beast as it perched on a telephone pole, again with no success. The encounters grew bolder, and the town's fear turned to resolve. The climax occurred on the night of October 3rd. A posse of the town's bravest men, armed to the teeth, traced the creature to an abandoned coal mine just outside of town. There, they were confronted by not one, but two of the visitors, a large one and a smaller one. As the winged beings emerged from the mine shaft, their horns glowing in the dark, the posse unleashed a volley of gunfire. In the face of the overwhelming assault, the creatures reportedly retreated back into the depths of the mine. The townsfolk heard them making a loud whirring sound before a great silence fell. The Van Meter visitors were never seen again. Explanations for the week of terror are scarce. Given the creature's bizarre abilities, flight, a projected light beam, and invulnerability, theories often lean toward the paranormal, suggesting an extraterrestrial or interdimensional being that used the old mine as a temporary base. More skeptical theories propose mass hysteria, perhaps triggered by the misidentification of a large owl, amplified by small-town gossip and sensational newspaper reports. Whatever the cause, the Van Meter visitor incident stands out in the annals of high strangeness. It was a concentrated siege by an unearthly entity, witnessed by credible people who fought back, leaving behind a perfectly preserved tale of when a monster, or something very strange, came to Iowa. In the Fisherville neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky, a tall, spindly railway trestle spans the waters of Pope Lick Creek. This bridge is home to one of America's most malevolent and dangerous urban legends, the Pope Lick Monster. Part man, part goat, and part sheep, this grotesque creature is not a shy beast to be glimpsed in the woods, but a sinister predator said to actively lure humans to their doom. The monster is described as a horrifying hybrid, possessing the muscular torso of a man, the powerful fur-covered legs of a goat, and a gnarled, horned head. Its face is said to be a pale, cruel mask with an aquiline nose and wide, unsettling eyes. While some tales arm it with a bloody axe, its primary weapons are far more insidious: its voice and its hypnotic gaze. According to the legend, the monster uses a variety of supernatural tricks to draw its victims onto the high, narrow trestle. It can perfectly mimic the voice of a crying child or a loved one in distress, creating an irresistible lure. Others claim it uses a powerful hypnotic stare to rob people of their senses, compelling them to walk out onto the tracks against their will. Once a victim is on the trestle, they're trapped. With no room to hide, they face a grim choice: risk a fatal fall to the creek bed below, or be struck by an oncoming train. Now, the creature's origins are the subject of various folk tales, the most popular being the tragic story of a circus train that derailed on the trestle during a lightning storm. A horribly mistreated human-goat hybrid performer, known as the Goatman, escaped the wreckage and now haunts the area, forever seeking revenge. What makes the Pope Lick monster particularly terrifying is that its legend is tied to a real-world hazard. The trestle is a very high, active Norfolk Southern Railway bridge. Tragically, the allure of the legend has tempted thrill-seekers and paranormal investigators to trespass on the tracks for decades, leading to numerous documented deaths and serious injuries. Local authorities and the railway company have issued repeated urgent warnings for people to stay away. The Popelec monster is a chilling example of a story that has crossed the boundary from folklore to fatal reality. Its horror lies not just in its grotesque form, but in its deadly lure, making the trestle itself the most dangerous monster in Louisville. In the sweltering summer of 1972, the quiet river town of Louisiana, Missouri, was gripped by fear. A creature, soon to be christened Momo the Monster, was stalking the wooded hillsides, leaving behind a trail of terror, strange tracks, and a lingering foul stench. Momo was Missouri's answer to Bigfoot, but with a set of bizarre features that made it uniquely unnerving. The panic began on the afternoon of July 11, 1972. 8-year-old Terry Harrison and his 5-year-old brother, Wally, were playing in their yard at the foot of Marzoff Hill when their older sister, Doris, heard them scream. Rushing to the window, she saw a horrifying sight. A creature standing over 6 feet tall and covered in shaggy black hair was holding a dead dog under its arm. Its most shocking feature was its massive pumpkin-shaped head, which appeared to sit directly on its shoulders with no visible neck. The beast emitted a deep, guttural growl before lumbering off into the woods, leaving behind an overpowering metallic odor. The children's father reported the encounter. An investigation by the local police chief uncovered large, 3-toed footprints and strange 3-fingered handprints. The story was published in the local newspaper, and the Momo panic began in earnest. Armed search parties combed the hills, and other residents came forward with their own terrifying accounts. Some reported hearing deep, rumbling growls from the woods at night, while others claimed to have seen the pumpkin-headed monster themselves. One woman reported that the creature tried to carry off her dog from her yard. For the rest of that July, Momo was the talk of the region. The description remained consistent: a tall, black-furred hominid, distinguished by its melon-shaped head, 3-fingered hands, and a penchant for preying on local dogs. Skeptics suggested the creature was a misidentified black bear, which are native to the area and can appear surprisingly large and oddly shaped when standing. Still others believed it to be an elaborate hoax. After a few weeks of intense activity, the sighting ceased altogether, and Momo vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Yet the story left a permanent mark. Momo the Monster remains Missouri's most famous cryptid, a classic example of a 1970s monster flap, and a chilling figure whose bizarre, pumpkin-headed silhouette still haunts the folklore of the Mississippi River bluffs. From the old-growth hemlock forests of northern Pennsylvania comes one of American folklore's most peculiar and most pathetic creatures, the Squonk. This is not a monster born of terror, but of profound sorrow. A legendary beast of the lumberjack camps, the Squonk is a creature so utterly ashamed of its own ugliness that it spends its entire life in hiding, weeping inconsolably. The Squonk belongs to a unique category of North American folklore known as fearsome critters. These were the tall tales and whimsical beasts invented by loggers in the 19th and early 20th centuries to pass the time and entertain each other in the deep, isolated woods. The legend of the Squonk was first widely published in William T. Cox's 1910 book, Fearsome Creatures of the Lumber Woods, which described it as a creature native to Pennsylvania. According to the lore, the Squonk's skin is ill-fitting and covered in warts and blemishes, causing it immense psychological distress. Now, it's a reclusive animal, and hunters who have tried to track one have found it a simple task, as they can just follow the tear-stained trail left on the forest floor. It's most active at dusk and dawn, when it can move about under the cover of twilight, its mournful sobs echoing through the trees. The creature's most remarkable trait, however, is its unique and tragic defense mechanism. When cornered or captured, the Squonk is capable of dissolving itself completely into a pool of tears and bubbles. The most famous Squonk story, recorded by Cox, tells of a hunter named J.P. Wentling who, after a great effort, managed to catch one. He put the weeping creature into a sack and started for home, noticing the load grew progressively lighter. When he finally opened the sack to show off his prize, he found nothing inside but a puddle of salty liquid. While a whimsical piece of regional folklore, the Squonk story has resonated in popular culture, most notably in the 1976 song Squonk by the progressive rock band Genesis, which faithfully retells the tale of its capture and dissolution. A creature defined not by its ferocity, but by its melancholy, the squonk is a perfect symbol of the lonely, imaginative world of the old lumber camps. Whether a figment of a logger's imagination or a genuine forest spirit, this sorrowful beast has cried its way into a permanent, if tear-soaked, place in American folklore. Now, our journey through the shadowed corners of American folklore comes to a close. We've traveled from the swamps of South Carolina to the skies of Arizona, from the coal mines of Iowa to the dark woods of Maryland, encountering a bizarre menagerie of the nation's most secret monsters. We've seen creatures born of tragedy, like the Popelik monster, otherworldly horrors like the Van Meter visitor, and sorrowful oddities like the Pennsylvania squonk. What these 25 tales show us is that a monster is never just a monster. It's a reflection of a place and its people, a personification of fear of the deep woods, the anxiety of a new technology, or the cautionary tale needed to keep children away from a dangerous railway trestle. These are the modern echoes of native legends, the superstitions of immigrant settlers, and the products of modern mass hysteria. As twilight settles here in the old woods of New England where I'm at, it's easy to feel the power these stories hold. Whether these cryptids are undiscovered species, misidentified animals, or simply phantoms of the collective imagination, their legends persist. They remind us that for all our maps and satellites, there are still pockets of mystery left in the world, and perhaps, just beyond the edge of the light, something strange is stirring, waiting to become the next great American folklore legend.